February 14th, 1862 was the last Friday London had under the sun. Swarms of bats filled the sky that day and hid the sun from sight, and when the earthquakes, vertigo, and screaming ebbed, the bats had dispersed and the sky had been stolen. Or, in truth, London had been. The city now sat in what appeared to be a vast cavern resting at the edge of a black sea. A strange black building lay at its heart, and everything had changed in an instant. Yet, as much as every reliable truth had been shattered by London's inexplicable plummet, this was the height of the Victorian era, and Londoners held on. No need to lose your manners, even if the new neighbours include octopus-faced men and quite literal devils. And no reason to disrupt the social calendar, even though Queen Victoria hasn't been seen since the fall, and hooded figures are now at work tailoring London to fit unknown purposes. But life in London continued, and continued, and it only got weirder from there. The aim of this guide is that, well, I've been a fan of Fallen London for over a decade now. It's a free browser game which has been running for about 15 years and has led to a number of other projects. There's a survival horror exploration games of Sunless Skies and Sunless Seas, and the visual novel Mask of the Rose. Plus there's a tabletop RPG that's currently in the works. I've played all of the games on and off, but about last year or so, I fell headfirst into an intense hyperfixation that is still going very strong. And I just love talking about the universe of Fallen London a lot. So what I want to do with this is just walk you into this world from the ground up. I hope that you'll be inspired to check out the games if you haven't, but I'm not going to talk about them at all from a gameplay point of view. Victorian England falls into a freaky cave. It goes more places than you can imagine from there. My approach when writing this has been to consider basically what I would want to tell a friend about the world if I wanted to interest them. Some helpful context and like a sprinkle of spoilers to excite them about the possibilities. Fallen London is many things and many genres depending on what you focus on. There's gothic drama, social satire, and every kind of bizarre nightmare you can imagine. Plus, a lot of exciting new ones to discover. The deeper you go, the more cosmic horror, existentialism, and linguistics that you'll find. And also, it's all about love. Never forget that. The games are very heavy on reading, with Fallen London itself containing over like 4 million words. And a running theme in the universe is language and the nature of truth, and so, fittingly, much of the game's text is open to interpretation. Many sources for deeper lore come from people who may be biased, stories of stories, ancient histories that might have been altered. I mean, my favorite example is one source, which is an illegal play put on by drunk or high Bohemians whose source is unknown and whose topic is a story which occurred about 4 billion years ago. And that's like the best and only source we have about this deep lore topic in question. So what I'm trying to get across is that while I can tell you some things, as the topics get odder, the veracity of what I say gets blurrier. There are inconsistencies and uncertainties in the text all over the place, and I'm here to give one account of the Neath in a slightly succinct form. Just hold me to nothing else. The cavern London has fallen into is known as the Neath, as in underneath. It is vast, with no apparent walls, and huge stalactites occupy the ceiling, covered in these glimmering, moving, false stars. The majority of plants that grow here are mushrooms, and the undersea teems with dangerous, monstrous life. The city of London has somehow been rearranged during the fall. Roads have been stitched together, buildings have gone missing, and the new masters of the city have ordered street signs removed and all old maps confiscated. At the center of all of this is one new building, looming over everything else with pointed black spires. This is the Bazaar, which glows with fiery sigils. The masters of the Bazaar now run the city, and perhaps there's a cause for alarm in how they hide themselves under these huge robes, how they're all like over 7 feet tall, how they seem to have glowing ember eyes. But everything since the fall has been a cause for alarm. And at least the masters seem to be striving for order. Like, they're giving out much-needed rations. It could be much worse. It doesn't take long for people to adapt to life in the Neath, or at least grow used to waking up there. Much of the day-to-day life of the city has remained the same, but there's an ever-growing list of things which are irrevocably different. Many animals can speak. For one, the rats are unionizing and the cats are selling secrets. People are having stranger and stranger dreams, sometimes shared. The masters have refined the law, and among the taxes on love stories and limits on diamonds, they've removed a great number of social barriers. Yeah, you'll still be snubbed for not wearing a fashionable hat, but you're welcome to marry whoever you want and identify your gender as you wish. The presence of decisively non-human beings in London might have eased the social transition. Like, who cares if two men marry? At least they're human. The rubbery men who emerge from the sewers certainly are not. Neither are the living statues who arrive from far across the Zee, or amber-eyed devils who are quick to just set up their own embassy and get to work selling souls. Perhaps the largest change the Neath has brought to humanity is the end of death. Kind of. Diseases, decapitation, deadly toxins, these can still kill you permanently, but pretty much everything else sends the deceased to a quiet boat on a dark river. A skeletal boatman is there, he guides the oars and plays chess to pass the time. You can stay on this boat if you want to discover what lies on the far shore, but most people would rather wake up a few days later with stiff joints and a life left to lead. It's surprisingly easy to come back from dying. The most prominent groups in London are known as factions. They're aligned in purpose rather than being homogenous groups. Like, we'll check in on various factions probably multiple times as we go in depth, but let's first just establish some of the most prominent ones of old London and how the fall has affected them. Starting with society. High society is resistant to change they aren't in control of, and old attitudes and philosophies still find a home in the courts. It's an ever-narrowing home, though, no matter how many grand galas are thrown and bottles of mushroom wine are drunk. The Queen has shuttered herself in her palace, and the royal family is seen less and less outside their home, until, pretty much, it is only the youngest princess born after the fall who is seen about the city. She's captivating enough to make up for the lack of her siblings, but it does cause people to whisper. Why did Queen Victoria allow the masters to run her city? What happened to Parliament? Where is Prince Albert? And will things ever be the same as they once were? Death is impermanent, but wounds are not. They heal, but only so much. Too many, and that arm isn't going to reattach. Too many, and it's a bit unseemly for polite society. Too many, and you are heading to the tomb colonies. A short ride up north, the tomb colonies are where London sends its elderly, scarred, and scandalous. People sent here may have plenty more life to lead, but it's preferred they do it elsewhere. Tomb colonists wrap their bodies in bandages to hold them together, giving them a mummy look. Quite a number of things in fallen London are clearly influenced by the culture and manias of the Victorian era, and for once, London is exporting bandaged corpses. Life is rather boring in the tomb colonies. They're all waiting to die, except death does not come casually in the Neath. So they're just waiting without end. Or, on occasion, to turn into a moth. The cops cling on to the old ways as society does, though for them it's less about old traditions than old, traditional corruption. As with all industrial and government bodies, the police force is under the control of the masters. Special constables act as bodyguards to the masters, while regular cops deal with London, where death sentences aren't permanent and new sciences allow for very new crimes. New economic rules and odd bans make it easier than ever to wind up a criminal. London is rife with crime of all shades, and underworld leaders with their own agendas. The Cheery Man leads one of the most prominent gangs, while the Topsy King pursues paintings and madness in the rooftop kingdom of the Flit. The Gracious Widow is old and influential, especially around the docks, where she smuggles all manner of things across the sea. One popular new criminal import is that of sunlight. There's no hope of any showing up down here naturally in the Neath, and the wealthy and desperate will pay a premium for a mirror-lined box of it, even though down here sunlight can be addictive, sickening, or even deadly. After the city-wide revolution that was London falling down a big hole, revolutionary ideas are on the rise like never before. Social barriers have been overturned, laws played with and changed. It's been an inspiration for those who seek further change. Early Fallen London primarily struck around these 19th century stereotypes of an anarchist maniac, the mad bomber with no cause but chaos. As the games have progressed, the Revolutionaries have become a particular favorite of many players and the writers, and have been further expanded upon. Like, the Neath shows how much the world is capable of being changed. Things treated as innate and eternal, like the sun rising each morning, can change in an instant, so why shouldn't society? The more that you learn about this universe, the more you understand why so many people want to tear the stars out of the sky. Devils traveling the streets and buying up souls is a point in Christianity's favor, kind of, but these devils aren't particularly biblical, and the holy text never mentioned that a soul can be easily stored in a bottle, or the existence of rubbery men. The church has had to revise certain parts of its theology, but it remains quite stalwart. They, with the army, even attempted to invade hell a few years after the fall. It went really, really badly. Victorian England was significantly Anglican, and the church faction represents this. There are other religions, ones which are similarly human ones that have adapted, and older traditions predating London's arrival in the Neath. Factions receive extra content and focus in the game, and having the church, rather than a broader category of faith, is sadly a bit limiting. You still see characters and references to other faiths, but less cohesively. The church is the church. Artists and dreamers adore the Neath. At the very least, they adore the honey found here, and the fantastical dreams that it bestows. Called Prisoner's Honey, the artist district of Veilgarden is rife with dens serving this powerful intoxicant. Just a spoonful can send you into heightened senses and fantastical visions. Those fully under its sway may be transported physically somewhere else, returning a few hours later with a head full of dreams. Sometimes the body will return before the mind, leaving them in a daze of light madness. There are many artistic movements formed in the Neath as well, which include things such as the nostalgic celestials who yearn for the sun, nocturnals who relish in the freedom of the ever-changing dark, the mycologians who draw on rot, bloom, and mushrooms, and bazaarines who adore the mysteries and depths of the bazaar itself. Many artists fit into other schools or reject them entirely, creating art that can only exist within the Neath, using poisonous impossible colors, or taking advantage of the lack of death for particularly macabre theater. Academics are a lot like artists. Their work is able to expand in directions it never could thanks to the Neath's peculiar features. Some people do not believe exploring the grammar of a language made of fire is safe. These people are correct, but someone ought to study it regardless. Scientist flourishes in the face of anti-logic. What is that red and gold shape beyond the mirror? Why do devils dance? If death can shatter, what else could break? And how much poison can I eat? These are all questions worth asking, and sometimes investigating. Urchins were a menace on Victorian streets, and they are more powerful than ever. Gangs of children run the rooftops, committing crimes and going to war with each other. The abandoned children of London know things they shouldn't, ancient screams and the ways of the wind. They use this esoteric lore in order to be better hooligans, as is their right. The animals of London display a greater intelligence than those of the surface. The most industrious of London's animals are the rats, who have taken to craftsmanship and wearing cute little outfits. There is a Neathly variety of rat known as the Rattus faber, who are especially dexterous, creating advanced machines and even little guns. Rats are still considered pests, even when some of them are prone to scurrying about on two legs and able to speak, and the rats of London still typically live short and unpleasant lives. Rats have a vast, complicated system of beliefs, with many rat saints and rat signs and rat winds, rat moons. They even run a rat market on weekends, though only rats, or those who pay for the honor of becoming a temporary rat, are allowed in. One thing before we continue with a few more of the factions of the universe. London is often referred to as the Fifth City. This is because it is the Fifth City. That is to say, there have been 4 previous cities that fell into the Neath across the centuries. The remains of these cities have been mostly buried or lost. The first city was Mesopotamian. It didn't end well. The second city was Egyptian. It didn't end well. The third city was Mayan. It didn't end well. The fourth city was Mongolian. It didn't end well. The fifth city is London. It's here right now. Rounding out the in-game factions are a number of groups which are not part of the newly changed London. Outsiders and old games. For one, Hell. Hell is real, and devils seem pretty damn real as well. They have burning gazes, strange appetites, and an interest in the economy of souls. However, despite this, they are secretly bees. Well, bees who are devils who are bees who are devils is probably how I'd put it, but don't worry about it. Hell is a city far to the west, serviced by a train from Moloch Street. Nearby is their brass embassy, and after the church's brief war, Hell has remained in commercial peace with London. The Devils are no more united, singular faction than anyone else, but they do share many mysteries. As much as they may resemble a classical idea of a charming fiend here to lead humanity to sin, much of their devilness is exaggerated for their own amusement. They often dress like they're from the 1920s because they passed through the future when immigrating to the Neath, and they like the look of the change. Often reviled for their particularly bizarre appearance, Rubbery Men lurk on the outskirts of London society. They're really quite polite, though. Early Fallen London made a point about them often being stoned to death publicly or murdered without consequence. A lot of era-appropriate Victorian xenophobia is left out of Fallen London for obvious making an enjoyable gameplay experience reasons, especially as the game has changed over the years. The hatred Rubbery Men face is probably related to this. Rather than humanity being bigoted against itself, Victorians have banded together in the Neath, but still seek something alien to hate. Like the Tomb Colonists, Rubbery Men feel like something created in early days of Fallen London to serve as light satire of the era. It's Victorian England, but the mummies are walking around, the foreigners everyone fears are squid men, the overseas continent London wants to conquer is even weirder than the stories, and the people replacing unionizing workers are actually living statues imported from abroad. Fallen London is made by a small studio, and it's been worked on by many writers over the years, with different approaches to the world and story changing over the years it's existed. Not all of it is aged well or was in the best taste, and other things feel like they're almost something but just fall short. It's an angle to keep in mind when looking at the world and the game, and as I go on. Rubbery Men cannot speak English, though with time and effort one can learn to understand their warbling speech and many tentacles. Even with translation, they can be mysterious in their intentions and desires. Many carry or search for chunks of gooey amber, wishing to trade it with humans before disappearing back below the streets. When I talk about Rubbery Men, by the way, do not mistake the use of men there for gender. It's rather man as in human, though they are anything but. Some Rubbery Men may be men, or accept a Londoner's decision to call them such, but these are squid aliens. They come in all sorts. The great game was played on the surface and long in the Neath far before London ever fell. The game is that of diplomacy, information, spies, and schemes. It's based on the real great game of the 19th century and the general war of intelligence that has followed nations for centuries. The great game is represented with chess and chessboard motifs. There are numbers of players and sides and schemes, but in terms of chess there are only two, black and white, but also red. White represents order, law, and control. Black represents anarchy, freedom, and chaos. And then red. Red is self-interest, desire, want, selfishness, revenge, passion. The Docks as a faction focuses on sailors and dock workers, but it's also a good opportunity to discuss the Zee a little bit. The Zee is deep and full of things odder than monsters, but there are plenty of those too, and there are countless islands that lay scattered about the shifting currents. For one, there's the Khanate, built by Fourth City survivors. To the south lies the Elder Continent, a land of 77 nations with a glimmering mountain at its core. Not far from London is Mutton Island, home to traditions both charming and quite hungry. There's a castle of frozen memories and an island where lost postmen obsess over undelivered mail. If you sail too far, you might find yourself in Polythreme, where everything is alive and anything might wake up. Sail even further and there might be a hole where the sun shines through, and farther still and you might brush against the deconstruction of reality itself. The Z is spelled with a Z and pronounced as a Z, as you may have heard, as are many Z-related terms because of Dutch sailors. The accent stuck around into common parlance, and now we have the Z, Z-side, Zailers, and of course, Zoop. The streets of London change during the fall in both arrangement and name. They're still prone to changing, but at least the landmarks and neighborhoods typically stay put. The game has this lovely map of the city, a map that's gone through various iterations over the years, and the geography within has suitably shifted slightly over time. Still, there's a few consistencies. To the east is the Z, linked to London through the Thames, which is now known as the Stolen River. A few places of Old London are easy to identify still. Along the water to the south is what is clearly Greenwich Observatory, and far up and in river is the half-sunk ruin of Big Ben. Other shards of London can be spotted or deciphered, but along with a change in name, most have changed purpose as well. I'm going to go through each place on the map in brief detail and just give a bit of flavor of what goes on there. The newest addition to the London skyline, the Bazaar is more than an ominous black structure constructed from an unknown material and lit with burning sigils. It's also a bazaar! The Bazaar contains a variety of shops, as do the streets in its immediate vicinity. It and its side streets are where some of the most prestigious shops in London are located. Few else can afford the rent. All the best art comes from Veilgarden, at least according to the many artists who gather in the neighborhood's pubs and honey dens. Veilgarden attracts people from every corner of society, leading to a diversity of thought and people that is still rare in London. A good quantity of this diverse thought is devoted to scathing literary critiques and financing more honey, but revolutionaries and other radicals also may find an audience. The streets of spite are home to much of London's population, particularly the poor. Narrow and confounding streets connect to bustling marketplaces where all that's legal and plenty that isn't can be found. Pickpockets, urchins, and the ever-common pickpocketing urchin thrive among the crowds. Spite is a district known for its criminal population, particularly in the Flit, the unofficial neighborhood of the rooftops. The Flit is the perfect place to disappear, as it's a complicated web of scaffolding, attics, roofs, and alleys. Few can navigate it, let alone reach it, making it a safe haven for criminals, a playground for urchins, and a shortcut for cats and couriers alike. Ladybones Road is the connective tissue between the civic services of London, linking the constables, diplomatic offices, and courthouses. A popular attraction here is the Hangman's Arch, which serves an obvious purpose. Victorians loved a public execution, and the area around the arch is populated by costummongers and crowds waiting for the next show. A famous district within Ladybones Road is that of Moloch Street, the devilish hub of London. Restaurants in the area cater to eclectic tastes, as devils visiting from hell stay within the brass embassy. The Moloch Street Express Railway departs from here on the long journey to hell. The only humans who ever ride it are those who have sold their soul. They don't return. Wolfstack Docks is more than the docks of London, but also, it is the docks of London. Sailors stay in seaside pubs waiting for the next voyage and drinking to excess. Dock workers load and unload from warehouses and shipyards. Travelers from far-off lands arrive in strange ships. London's Admiralty has its offices and navy close by. The docks is also home to London's industrial sector. Factories pollute the water and air, and if you know anything about the Industrial Revolution, it isn't great inside those factories either. Brutal machinery, long hours, exhausting work, all done for pennies. Attempts to complain, protest, or, stars forbid, unionize, are suppressed with excessive violence. At the end of the civility of London, yet only across the river, Watchmaker's Hill is a sparsely populated area of wilderness and monsters. The titular hill is capped with what used to be the Greenwich Royal Observatory. With no stars to observe, it's been taken over by blind astronomers who deal a little too closely with spiders. There's a few pubs along the edges and London's Department of Menace Eradication, as there's far worse that needs killing than rats to keep people safe these days. But also, they do still need someone to kill rats. The marshes surrounding it are home to some of the more dangerous creatures of the Neath, at least the dangerous ones that also happen to live near London. 10-foot towers of roaming mushrooms, screaming vegetation, eye-stealing spiders, and especially large wolves. It's not a good place for a picnic. As it sounds, Miss Plenty's Carnival is a carnival held on the outskirts of London, owned and operated by Mrs. Plenty. It is open year-round and has all you'd expect. Carnival games, a fortune teller, Ferris wheel, big top tent, freak shows, side stalls, refreshments, a house of mirrors. It is exceptionally straightforward in a way. It is less so in that all of the sights and sounds are still utterly neathly. The Ferris wheel dips below the surface to depths where the earth seems to have a heartbeat, and the only light comes from giant evil slug things. The refreshments include rubbery lumps and mushroom-based sweet treats, while spectators gawp at caged rubbery men and a choir of the drowned. There's betting on weasel fights, and you're liable to have your pocket picked on several occasions over a single visit. So, still pretty typical carnival business, all things considered. The Labyrinth of Tigers is a zoo. At least, it's advisable you think of it as one. It contains 7 coils, distinct areas of a confounding maze which is increasingly difficult to navigate. The first coil is home to what you would expect, a pack of hyenas, a few master-run gift shops. By the second coil, otter creatures can be seen. Penguins and a giant crab, yes, but also the bifurcated owl, the inhabitor of wolves, and the thing in the mirror. Unlike the carnival, it isn't safe to assume there's exaggerations about the exhibits on display. The danger only grows deeper as you go, though few ever find the third coil or beyond. Those that do discover that the third coil is full of humans. Many seem mad, perhaps dangerous, but it isn't obvious why they're locked up, and they certainly would like to be set free. Interestingly, the Labyrinth of Tigers has a distinct lack of tigers on display. The tigers instead walk freely through the coils, and in fact appear to be running the place. Since the fall, the Queen has not been seen outside her palace, which has been boarded up and closed off to most visitors. She is still seen at court, but appears dour, with a dislike of loud noises and too much light. Her consort has not been seen, nor have most of her many children. As much as she has retreated within her royal court, the traitor empress, as she's now called, is still the Queen and does command great power. It just isn't always clear how much, or how she exercises it outside of the Shuttered Palace. During the fall, Parliament and the attached Big Ben landed in the river. Or perhaps they were placed there. Parliament sunk entirely, while Big Ben remains cocked within the stolen river. It has been renamed to the House of Chimes, and now serves as an exclusive social club for the masters and their favourites. The masters pretend that there is one of them known as Mr. Chimes, who oversees the place, but in truth this is just an identity whichever master is in attendance takes on, rather than any one of them in particular. The Royal Bethlehem is a luxurious hotel with few available rooms. The manager of it is an ubiquitous figure across London, at least for a select number of people. Those who are grappling with nightmares may see him everywhere, passing them in the street with a merry greeting, with such shiny brass buttons on his coat and a profound sense that something is terribly off. The Royal Bethlehem used to be Bethlehem Royal Hospital, a London asylum and a place where we derived the word Bedlam from. The Bethlehem, which still exists today, is nearly 800 years old and has a history full of every sort of neglect and abuse one imagines from an ancient psychiatric hospital. In fallen London, Bethlehem has been changed into a hotel, but it does retain its roots. The manager appears to those overtaken by badness and mental illness and takes them to stay within the hotel. Many leave, perhaps even feeling better, likely a better result than the actual hospital had during the 19th century. Each fallen city has existed in approximately the same location, nestled with the bazaar at its center. Rather than stacked directly on top of each other, though certainly some ruins do persist below London streets, the remains of other fallen cities congeal in the forgotten quarter, as if placed there in exile. Tombs and ruins from the 4 cities across several thousand years are mashed together in a maze of history and desolation. It has the eerie vibe of any graveyard, though with far more cutthroat archaeologists, devils, and spies.
Who are these mysterious overlords who now reign over London? And why do so many people wish to kiss them?
The second question will have to wait. There are 11 masters of the bazaar. Each has dominion over London's industries and trades. They're tall and walk strange, with long-gloved fingers and crimson eyes, all wearing identical, bulky coats. Though each is called Mr., it's doubted that they're men, and in fact the most accurate pronoun for them is its. Each is embroiled in machinations which often come in conflict with those of their fellows. Humans, caught in the middle, do not fare well. Mr. Wines is one of the easiest masters to track down. It throws extravagant revels and occasionally even remembers to pay for them. It seems friendly when drunk enough, but holds no love for humanity. They're just fine enough company to get sloshed with. Wines also has domain over other party-related activities, music, dancing, and sex workers. In some ways, Mr. Spices is Wines' other half. Spices controls drugs, spice, perfume, and other little things that add flavor to life. However, Spices and Wines cannot stand each other and have a fierce rivalry. Spices is often grumpy and irritable, but can be quite cheery when suitably zonked out of its mind. Machinery, tools, construction, pens. Mr. Iron's purview is wide and often lethal. It is rarely seen in London, keeping to its factories and workshops. It does not speak, instead writing short, blunt replies without having to look up, or cease writing with its other hand. The masters wear oversized dark cloaks, which make it difficult to recognize which of them they are. The exception to this is Mr. Stones, who cannot resist the call of bedazzlement. Even at its most subtle, it wears countless bangles, bracelets, rings, brooches, and adornments. It jingle-jangles as it goes. Stones is extremely possessive about diamonds and gemstones, using its power to claim as many of them as it can, which is to say, most of them. It mostly speaks in brusque remarks and dives into these and thous when irritated. It is my favorite. Mr. Fires can be warm and a good conversationalist. It is a horrendous tyrant, but all the masters are in their own ways. Mr. Fires in particular controls coal, fire, gas, and with them many factories and weapon yards. It resents the concept of workers requiring safety, breaks, food, water, and sleep. When there is any threat of unionization, protests, or discontent, it calls in its enforcers to fix that. Mr. Pages controls the Ministry of Public Decency. This ministry requires anything written, from novels to plays, be first reviewed for decency. With luck, it'll only be a little censored, and this is very much inspired by the real policies of censorship in publishing and stage plays of the Victorian era. Mr. Page's control of publishing and language grants it significant power over information in London. What is and isn't allowed can be mysterious. It's incredibly expensive to export romance books in particular, and though the creation of them is encouraged, many love stories wind up seized and stolen. Pages delights in using complicated words, often of its own making. As it collects language itself, perhaps it is using regular words we'd all know, if only Pages hadn't hoarded the meaning. Silky smooth and many-layered, Mr. Veils manages textures and fashion. It has many sharp opinions on clothing, but takes a surprising interest in hunting as well. It can be uncannily charming, but typically one finds it dismissive and hostile instead. Mr. Apples is an affable purveyor of all manner of edible things, though Mr. Hearts controls meat. Mr. Apples has a particular interest in immortality. Not dying in the Neath isn't the same thing as living forever, and it performs all manners of experiments to discover the secrets of eternity. The domain of Mr. Cups is wider than you might assume, though, yes, it does control the fillable drinkware industry. Mr. Cups is in charge of the rag and bone men of London, the reliquers, who collect household scraps and waste. It has an eye for antiques, relics, and lost items. I mean, a trash bin is, in its own way, a kind of cup. Kind of. Meat and flesh of all sorts falls under Mr. Hearts' name. It is the finest butcher in London and sells beautifully deadly tools to assist in this. Mr. Hearts is friendly enough, but threatening. They're all threatening. It has an interest in monster breeding and enjoys games. In the Neath, Mirrors can serve as gateways to dreams, and Mr. Mirrors is in control of them and other fragile things. Mirrors is never seen in public, and its actions are especially elusive. Tier 2. Welcome. The tiers are very arbitrary. All of this is. This is now where we will begin answering some questions, giving some early truths. There will be spoilers more so than previous, but spoilers continues to be a very nebulous term when there is so much more I'm not discussing and more layers to everything that I am. Still, I'm going to pose some questions and answer them, and get into some things that are not immediately apparent when one first enters the world of Fallen London. What is behind mirrors? Since the fall, Londoners have begun to notice strange things in mirrors. Movement in the corner of your eye, an uncanniness to your reflection, colors in the dark as you lay on the edge of sleep. The place of dreams is known as Parabola. This is where a prisoner's honey takes you, though you're often too intoxicated to properly take it in. A land of impossibilities and unreality, a dense jungle where snakes conspire and logic hides. There's a forest full of remembered histories and chessboard armies locked in eternal war. All dreamers visit Parabola, though few are conscious of it. It is also possible to enter Parabola while awake by passing through a mirror. The dreaming chaos is harder to digest while awake, but easier to navigate. The question of what is Parabola is a very complicated question. The first answer is that it is exactly as it seems to be, which is to say, nonsense. A place which operates on dream logic and has been shaped by those who visit. Parabola is called the is-not. It is a mirror of the is of reality. All kinds of beings inhabit Parabola, but there is one species uniquely at home there, the Finger Kings. They're little snakes who sometimes knot themselves together into bigger and scarier snakes. They want to exist, but seem to be the only thing which entirely cannot. They make deals with dreamers, often promising information and power in exchange for that dreamer becoming a vessel. While Finger Kings are dubiously trustworthy, they generally make honest deals in complicated language and terms. Loosely, you could compare them to Fae in this way, and the dreamlike connections of Parabola is another link. Not necessarily malicious, but certainly preoccupied with their own goals as a priority, and never quite what they seem to be. Why are Finger Kings outlawed from reality? It's a good question, and here's something which isn't an answer. Cats are heavily involved in preventing Finger Kings from leaving Parabola. When cats dream, their dream self is a big cat such as a panther, and they use this big catness to wage an organized campaign of war against the snake armies. The cats are not alone in this war. Tigers, separate from cats who dream that they are tigers, are former allies and fellow snake haters. Tigers come from the Elder Continent, where they have their own nation and wear spectacular little hats. What is the reason for this war? It has gone on an awful long time. The reason might simply be, at this point, that they are at war because they have been at war. What is a soul? Most Londoners believed in souls before they fell to a place where there was a tangible proof of them. These days, devils extract souls with forks, and you can purchase 25 of them for an echo within the bazaar. What is a soul? Some sort of gaseous, feeble thing. Though all are unique, there is little recognizable about a soul once it's removed from its host. Little that separates it from another. Some glow, others shift about in their containers. Eyes might peer back from a viscous fog. Certain traits may carry from a host, emotions and personality just echoing through. Souls can come in many colors and varieties, and certain traits are more valuable than others, though devils are hardly forthright on why. There are also flaws, marks on the soul which heavily lower its value. These flaws include things like being clear, cold, curdled, fermented, flickering, lightless, and stained. As with the mystery of what adds value, why flaws subtract is mysterious. What use is a soul? Why should it have value at all? Devils extract souls, but what they do with them is not clear. Mostly they just seem to collect them. Devils are not a unified group, but their evaluation of the worth of a soul, on a whole, is. The process of removing a soul is called abstraction. It's a fairly short and painless process that supposedly about 10% of Londoners have gone through. Yes, many of the soulless become passionless husks, but others barely notice the difference. It can be a hassle to track down your soul after you sell it, but it is possible to find it and put it back. You just want to make sure that you got the right one. Can the surface ever be returned to? London, sinking abruptly into the earth, did not leave a hole. Returning to the surface seemed impossible, but a few months into the fall, the masters announced it was not. Ships arrived from above through the Cumaean Canal, and this passage, with a series of locks, leads to the surface of Lake Avernus, in southern Italy. How this passage functions is simple. It does. The Neath has different laws than the surface, especially regarding the laws of space and time. There are more places where the Neath and surface connect, but they are closely guarded and often secret. London and the surface are eager to reconnect after the fall. They establish trade and accept London's new bizarre home and existence, though the stories that they hear seem too outlandish to be true, and the trade goods from the Neath tend to degrade or outright be destroyed by sunlight. And speaking of, many Londoners miss the sun, and like many Londoners in modern day, direct exposure to sunlight is deadly to them. The Neathborn, once dead and parabolan, disintegrate instantly to the sun's deadly lasers. It takes approximately maybe a month of living in the Neath before the sun turns on you, less so if you've been exposed to enough Neathly weirdness. You go through enough strangeness and you pop right back up to the surface and the sun will get you. Yet the sun is still appealing. Nostalgia for it blooms easily in the Neath, especially with the knowledge that it can never be returned to. Who caused the fall? In 1861, Prince Albert died. That's what happened in the real world. In 1862, Prince Albert lived, because London came to the Neath. The cause of the fall is complicated, but the truth of London's fall is this. Queen Victoria sold London to the Bazaar in order to save her husband's life. The masters travel to the surface at times and negotiate the sale of cities. Each time a city arrives in the Neath, it was because it was sold. And often it was sold for love. The first city was perhaps the Sumerian city of Uruk. The man who sold it was a priest king whose lover lay dying. The masters promised that they could save the dying man with a shard of life-giving diamond. However, when they replaced his heart with it, he became perhaps too alive, blossoming into the living clay island of Polythreme, which now lies far across the sea. This man, the lover, now known as the King with 100 Hearts, is not the happiest about what occurred in this process. To add to this story, the priest king in question was almost certainly Gilgamesh. His lover is equivalent to Enkidu, but is not the one from the epic. The lover was a merchant from Asia, and being made from clay was his fate, not his origin. The second city was Egyptian, under the reign of Akhenaten, and it's worth noting that a lot of this is quite speculative and hinted at lore. Akhenaten is a pharaoh famous for ignoring traditional Egyptian religion, and instead instating Atenism, which is a far more monotheistic-ish religion centered around sun worship. The Duchess is a notable power in the Neath, a woman who holds court at the palace and has a particular affinity for cats. She is actually one of several daughters of the pharaoh and was the one who caused her city to fall. Her betrothed, who was also her father, it was Egypt, lay dying from a snake bite, and the masters promised to save his life. He was instead transformed into a horrific, suffering entity whose skin oozes deadly venom. But he is alive, just as the masters promised. The third city was Mayan, though we really don't have any hints towards a specific one. It's a pattern breaker in another way too, as rather than negotiate the sale of the city to save a life, the masters struck a deal with 3 priests. This deal had disastrous consequences all around, but wasn't really about love. The city actually was sold for flesh, and it's a rather complicated story. The fourth city was Mongolian, and was Karakorum. The gracious widow, now a smuggling kingpin, was once the favored daughter of the Khan. Her pursuit of a peach-flavored elixir of immortality led her towards a forbidden romance, but this did not actually cause the fall. Instead, the Masters schemed for Karakorum to be under the threat of invasion by its more powerful neighbors. Rather than lose the city, the Khan sold it to the Bazaar. And then, of course, we come to the fifth city, and the Bazaar at the heart of it, like it sat at the heart of each city it bought before. What is the Bazaar? When I say that the Bazaar is buying cities, I mean it. When I say the hooded figures are the masters of the Bazaar, I mean it. But the of the there is possessive. They are the masters who belong to the Bazaar, just as the Bazaar's seal marks each bill of sale. The Bazaar is alive, and it's running the show. The shopping mall of dark spires and smoldering sigils is only one part of the Bazaar's body. In full, it resembles a gigantic crustacean buried in the city as a crab hides in the sand. The Bazaar hired the masters to serve as its servants and negotiate the sale of cities. Many of the new laws and economies exist specifically to serve the Bazaar's goals. And what are those? Who is this beautiful crab who has stolen my heart? I have so many other things to explain first before I can tell you everything about the Bazaar. But it's all about love. The Bazaar searches for cities colored by love and tragedy, and it collects them like it collects love stories. It takes all it can, and then it steals another city and does it all over again. You'd like to hope it has a good reason. As it is fond of saying, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Hopefully. What are the masters? If the Bazaar is a chitinous alien, what does that make the masters? Hopeless humans, or bats? They're bats. Specifically, their species is known as curators. They're four-winged hunters, larger than a locomotive, from a place far beyond the Neath. Curators are mostly solitary in the wild, gathering according to a strict calendar for the day of the hunt, the day of the feast, the day of bargain, and others. Each has a fascination which they obsess over and hoard viciously. Curators are hermaphroditic and bear offspring in litters. However, most litters of curator will contain a runt whose existence is criminal and who is typically killed and eaten. Of course, all of that refers to curators in the wild. The masters of the Bazaar are not. They aren't the only bats employed by a crab in the universe, but they are an exceptional case. Each master is a criminal of their society and signed on with the Bazaar because of this. At the end of the contract, it is suggested that the Bazaar would assist with their criminal records somehow. All shall be well, and so on. But that end is nowhere in sight. It's been thousands of years and 5 cities. The masters are getting restless. While the perception from the outside is of the masters as a unified force of control over the city, they are far from united. Each is embroiled in plots which often go against co-workers or the Bazaar itself, and none are particularly fussed about who gets hurt in the process. In fact, causing irrevocable harm to innocents is often a key part of their scheme. Tier Z. The tier system is extremely arbitrary, but this one is about the Z. The Neath is huge. It's often referred to as being a cavern the size of Europe, and in fact it is infinitely larger. Each cardinal direction has an association at Z. To the west lies London, beyond it Hell, and the hinterlands in between. To the south is the vast Elder Continent, and the 77 kingdoms of the Presbyterate. To the east lies the Deconstruction, and to the north is the cold place where all things end. There are many islands across the Z, some of which I'm saving for later, have mentioned briefly, and others of which I'm electing to not expand upon, but are nevertheless intriguing, such as a coral reef desperate to de-evolve, a calcified heart which leaks so much sadness Z creatures seek it out to die, and a volcano where exiled devil royalty plots. The Z is full of odd phenomena and creatures too, like candle wax wind and whales capable of ascension. But for now, let's just start with the south a little bit. This is the Elder Continent. When it comes to looking at the original Victorian cultural inspirations for Fallen London's world building, the Elder Continent is one of the most straightforward to me. Because here we have a vast, jungled landmass across the Zee, full of strange people, kingdoms, customs, and tigers. The Elder Continent is certainly, I think, inspired by the colonial vision of Asia, and the unbelievable stories that spread about the strangeness of other lands, particularly during the Victorian era. In this case, though, the Elder Continent really is that strange. Like, I think of the old story of these furry ants the size of foxes, known for digging up gold and hiding it in their burrows. They were rumored to live around India, and this was said by Herodotus around 430 BCE, and it kind of sounds ridiculous, except those beasts kinda turned out to be real. They turned out to be marmots. The Elder Continent is like if every inaccurate report by an explorer turned out to be true. This is a feeling reinforced by the presiding governing power of the Elder Continent, the Presbyterate, which employs a specific office whose sole job is to lie and mislead outsiders about what the Elder Continent contains. The difference between what is true and what is told is blurry across all of the Neath, but especially to the south. The Elder Continent feels far more fantasy than anywhere else in the Neath. Kingdoms in the Presbyterate include ever-bleeding warriors, beasts who may be men, and walled cities where darkness is forbidden. The first feature of the Elder Continent, which travelers notice, is the light. Brighter during the day and dimming politely at night, the south is lit by a huge, glowing mountain of light. The mountain is worshipped as the god Stone, and her radiance gives people and land excessive vitality. The people of the continent can live for hundreds of years, and may return from grievous injuries others cannot, more so than any other humans of the Neath. This is Stone's blessing, but it does go beyond the continent. Her light is the reason death does not last in the Neath for humans. Many citizens of the Elder Continent are humans, and trace their civilization far before cities began to fall. Some don't even believe in the surface. They know that they came instead from the garden, which lies within the Mountain of Light, and they're probably right. Not all who live within the Elder Continent belong to the Presbyterate, however. Most prominent are the Tigers, who are still loyal to the Prester, the governing body, but otherwise are independent. Long ago, the Tigers were raised up by Stone for a sacred purpose, most likely fighting snakes. With that sort of holy mission, it's no surprise that they're so smug. They're also smug because they are tigers. Beyond wearing fun hats, tigers enjoy smoking, and often employ London urchins to serve as their opposable thumb-wielding assistants. Not far from the Elder Continent lies a sea of voices, and within that, Polythreme at its heart. Everything on Polythreme lives, and anything brought there is liable to join in. Unfortunately, the first thing most sentient objects do is scream, and beyond breaks for gossip, few ever stop. When the king with 100 hearts, who himself is Polythreme, dreams, clay men emerge from its soil. Perhaps to deal with overpopulation, or in some sort of long-standing deal with the Bazaar, many wind up sent to London to work. Once their bodies break down, they return to the clay of their king. Claymen are an interesting species within the game, if species is the right term for living statues. Their initial depiction in Fallen London was of simple-minded, cheap labor from abroad, used as enforcers, scabs, and toughs. Claymen do not protest the mistreatment they often face from Londoners, and in fact do not complain much at all. Perhaps this is because they are facets of the king who dreamed them, and generally accept this life is their duty. Not all claymen are cooperative, however. Those of too much independence, and those who are created physically imperfect, are called unfinished. One who is unfinished having more free will than one who isn't makes sense from the perspective of them being machine-like constructs. It's a flaw in their design which causes unexpected action. Claymen have had various developments past their initial portrayal, but they still sit in an odd spot in canon and how they are viewed and exist in London society. There's this distinct sense that the writing has purposefully tried to shift away from early portrayals, but still hasn't found somewhere to rest. Claymen are clearly inspired by the Jewish golem, and within that, the early portrayal of them as obedient constructs who work with an assigned purpose makes sense. Without broader context, it's fine to have living clay constructs who lack free will, but claymen carry a number of unfortunate implications that I feel like is the reason for canon to be a bit in an odd space right now. After all, they are brought in as cheap labor and treated as property. scabbing to oust unions and enduring tons of abuse. Broader context places clay men as metaphorically immigrant or slave labor, so having most of them be compliant in this and only a few born with the ability to rebel just isn't a good look. The idea that clay men are all uniformly unfeeling, simple-minded, and lacking independence has shifted, and now Unfinished is less of an internal flaw in a clayman's creation and more presented as a label given by others. Londoners draw a hard line between a good clayman and an unfinished one, but the truth is not so simple. What's wrong with a clayman who doesn't want to work? Well, quite a lot according to the people who bought him, and nothing to those with a bit more sympathy. Being unfinished is a label placed on any clayman who doesn't conform in the way Londoners prefer, and that treatment may push them then towards new paths rather than being a unique quirk in their creation. They're an interesting species. I like themes of free will and personhood, autonomy and identity, and claymen have room for those kinds of stories. Canon definitely still sits in an awkward area, but it's nevertheless better than it once was. Like Rubbery Men, early Fallen London writing leaned more on an exaggeration of Victorian concerns with a neathly twist. Like factory work and unions being busted by cheap labor and machines, but in this case they are one and the same, and living statues. And, of course, it is once more worth noting that claymen is not a gendered term. Claymen typically resemble masculine statues of some likeness to their progenitor. Londoners assume they are male because of this, but they are clay women, clay men who really are men, and probably quite a lot of other rock-based gender identities out there. At the end of the Fourth City, leadership became divided and quite compromised. A large portion of the city departed across the Zee, eventually settling in the Far East Salt Steppes and founding the new Khanate. The Khanate is now a powerful city on the forefront of technology in the Neath. Electric lights and weaponry are their signature, and their navy is more than enough to make London nervous. The two cities are at peace, in that they are not at war. The great game of spycraft thrives as both cities keep a cautious eye on each other. The Khanate is populated by several clans who exist in a sometimes contentious harmony. The Leopard clan is the royal clan, which the Khan belongs to. The Tie Men lead the intelligence networks, as well as form the White and Gold secret police. The Eagle clan dominates the navy, the Wolf clan manages engineering upkeep, and the Turtle clan handles manufacturing. The Fourth City is known for its horsehead imagery, but there's a lack of horses in the Neath in general. What the Khanate are milking instead to produce their famous eye rag isn't worth worrying over. It tastes good, and it's worth quite a lot of money. Few things grow without light, and much of London's diet in both food and wine has become fungal. Mushrooms of all kinds flourish across the Neath, in various configurations of deadly, edible, and sapient. 12-foot fungus columns roam the marshes, while 2-foot Blemmingans haunt poetry readings within. Of them, it's typically better to cross paths with the latter. Blemmingans do eat flesh, but they're usually far more interested in literary merits and travel. They originate from the Uttershroom, which is exactly what it sounds like, a towering mushroom growing out of the Zee, surrounded by spores and inhabited by fungal hybrids and those who feel safe among the tendrils of the mother mushroom. Those who die at Zee are capable of returning, but things can go wrong in the process, and sometimes they come back wrong. Those who drowned are especially likely to come back as Drownies, though exactly what determines the transformation is less certain. A Drownie resembles a soggy corpse of decreasing humanity. Though technically alive, a Drownie is in many ways dead. Their formal life becomes unimportant, and new instincts take over. Drownies serve the Fathom King, who rules over the depths of the Zee. Drownies are capable of a beautiful, maddening singing which can form powerful illusions, convey things impossible to put into words, and entrance people. They use this song especially to lure sailors into joining them, and to sink ships into the Fathom King's hold. The Fathom King himself is an oddity. He is not wrathful, though he expects respect and tribute. He used to be human, and now is something a lot more choral. He's married to a hateful alien sea urchin incapable of love, and he loves her very, very much. The Fathom King's influence as a Zee power is well and long established. One long-standing festival in the Neath involves paying him direct tribute so that he will grant good fishing for the coming year. Somewhere to the southwest Zee is a naval base controlled by London, housed within the Grand Geode. And not far from it is the sun. An artificial sun, that is. The Dawn Machine is an experimental design with uncertain ambitions behind it. It is beautiful and complex, spinning wheels within wheels and marked with fiery sigils of light. The Royal Navy is very defensive of this machine, with unclear purpose or reasons. Many of them are more than just protective, they are evangelical, golden eyes gleaming as they seek to spread the machine's influence across the Neath. See, the Dawn Machine gets in your head. You love the Dawn Machine. The Dawn Machine is wonderful. The sun is good. The sun is perfect.
The sun is the sun is the sun is the sun, the sun, the sun, the sun, the sun.
There are numerous beings within the Neath that may be called great powers, but there are 3 distinct gods who are especially respected among sailors. These are Stone, Salt, and Storm. Stone is the god of home, hearth, and healing. She is the mountain of light, which shines in the south. Stone is considered to be a kind and loving god, though she has cursed a few populations over the centuries. Personally, I forgive her. Salt is the god of travelers and farewell. He long ago went east, and others may follow. What is east? Maybe it's a mirage. Maybe it's a paradise. Time stretches needle-thin, and the horizon lasts forever. There's a reason the East is called the deconstruction. Some people, blessed, cursed, or simply mad, are driven to give up everything they are and pursue traveling east. They never return, but then, to be a traveler, one must return, and it is believed that Salt one day will too. There is so much more to say about Salt, but trust me, it will not make any sense yet. Storm is the god of storms and wrath. He is said to dwell within the roof of the Neath, and controls the winds and weathers at sea. He is violent and capricious, and not a god that you want to anger. Interestingly, he's also worshipped within London by an unexpected group, the Urchins. The children who run the rooftops of the city have surprising knowledge of the winds and the false sky. They may not know Storm by name, but they know him and he knows them. Unusual considering his otherwise wrathful reputation. Far to the north lies the Avid Horizon, a gigantic gateway sealed shut and guarded by stone watchers. The air here is frozen, the waters are patrolled by living icebergs and a hateful island of black glass. It is a bad idea to go north. People do go north for a variety of reasons. A number of them are compelled by a strange need, and these are the seekers of the name, whose acquired hunger pulls them further and further into a well of madness, and it ends at the gates of the Avid Horizon. Whose name are we talking about, and why do they want to seek it so bad? Well, the seeking plotline is infamous within Fallen London. It used to be almost entirely secret, with a strong spoiler embargo requested, especially for the endings. Even with that lifted, I'm just not going to cover that now. It's very long, difficult, and taxing storyline within the browser game, which has existed for a very long time. Parts of its infamy was how it existed primarily to hurt the player. There's a story and lore beyond the torture, but the way it punishes you for playing it is part of the collective whole. This is a experience in the game that is actively just grueling, miserable. It takes long, and that is not an exaggeration in any way. It just hurts you and tortures you for playing it. And that is part of it. It's accessible nearly immediately and only slightly hidden, but I would not advise it, especially as your first experience of Fallen London. And perhaps abruptly, so ends this introduction, this part 1. I have plans to write a second part eventually, diving into deeper depths of things. It's been very difficult to know where to draw the line, what to include or not include. It's so subjective, but I thought I'd come up with things that hopefully give a good picture of just a lot of interesting beginnings of stories, hints of greater things that exist within Fallen London. It's just such a fun universe that I really like. There's just so much going on so many different levels. there's different things that different people find within it in a really exciting way. I like it, okay? I really like it. I'm very autistic, and I'm trying to present both kind of professionally, but also it really is my special interest, and I've just had a really nice time, and hopefully this video is fun. And when we get to a part 2, I will be diving into much deeper and more spoiling depths of things, maybe explain some storylines that actual players of the games have struggled to find or understand, because Fallen London has so much text in it, so many different things, not all of it is written straightforward. It's incredibly easy for players to miss what's going on in so many cases. And in some ways that's a positive in that it leaves things more open to interpretation and discovery. In some ways it's a negative because people encounter something and have no idea what it's referring to. So I'm excited to get to that. I'm excited to talk about the sun, the chain, the message, the truth, and that goddamn crab.